Hi, I'm Rachel Carr. I'm a GB climbing coach and Psychi athlete, and today I'm going to be teaching you how to hangboard. In this video, I'm going to be going over when best to start hangboarding if you're new to climbing, how to do it safely, and 3 different protocols that you can use when doing the training. So you might be wondering what hangboarding actually is. Hangboarding is these wooden boards that you might see around your climbing wall, and you might be thinking, what is that for? It's basically another method for training finger strength. So if you're already climbing a little bit already and you feel like you're getting a bit of a stop because you've learnt your techniques, you're getting really good at the movement, but then you just can't get any better, you might then start hangboarding, and it's just basically hanging off of a bit of wood and trying to build up that finger strength. This is something that you should do a while after starting climbing, not straight away, potentially like a year into it. And all you do is you do different lengths of time with different amount of weight hanging off the board on only your fingers. You can do it with your feet on the ground as well to make it a little bit easier, and that's always suggested when you're starting off, but you can also add weight or remove weight using different methods. There's loads of different ways that it can be used, and the most important thing is to do it safely but also not be scared of it. It is just another method of training, it's just something slightly new, and once you get used to it, it's something that's really useful. So to help me demonstrate this hangboarding, or as some people might know it, fingerboarding, I'm going to get Hannah along, who's new to this, and she's going to help me to demonstrate the safe way to hang onto it and a few different training methods. Hannah's been doing a little bit of training on the climbing wall, making sure that her technique is really good, but is struggling to get any stronger at the minute. So we're going to get Hannah on this fingerboard, and we're going to try and work on her finger strength a little bit. To start off with, I'm just going to get her to hang on the biggest holds on the board, so it's going to be these jugs at the top. And the first thing we're going to do is make sure that you're hanging nice and straight with your shoulders and your core engaged, so that we're not getting anything out of place and it's nice and safe. So if you want to grab these top jugs here for me, and you're not even going to take your feet off the ground, so just stand underneath it and then try and sink down into it, so bend your knees. And you can see Hannah's got her shoulders nice and engaged here, they're not going up towards her ears, and she's got a nice flat back. And all she's doing is just putting a little bit of weight into that fingerboard to start with, nothing too intense, and just feeling how it goes. How does that feel for you?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Nice.
Good. So that's a nice easy starting place when you're doing fingerboarding. It's comfortable handholds, not too strenuous, and it helps you to get really adjusted into the actual hangs. If you do too much too fast, you can really get an injury, so you want to take it nice and slow. And all you would need to do for this is a nice long 30-second hang to get into it, and that'll get you some shoulder strength to start off with and then get into those fingers. Once you want to go from there, you can start moving down onto these next holds, which is the sort of bigger slots, and do the same thing again. So if you want to try the slots this time, so fingers in there, and you're looking to bend all knuckles evenly. And then what you're going to do is again sink down into your feet, and we want to make sure that your hips are nice and under the board evenly. So you could even take a bit of a step forward with your feet and then sink your hips down again. Yeah, and you can see that Hannah's much straighter here, so the weight is going evenly into that board. And again, easing into it to start with, nice long hands that aren't too difficult before we move on to the harder ones. So now that Hannah's had a bit of a feel of the fingerboard and knows how to safely hang from it, we're going to start looking at some protocols. So that's going to be something that is 30 seconds long with a nice big rest in between of about 2 to 4 minutes. And we're only going to do about 4 of those hangs. So we're going to go back to the same place that we were before using these middle slots on the board. She's going to get back into that comfortable position with her feet on the ground, and she's going to be looking for an easy level of difficulty. So she's not getting pumped, she's not getting tired, and she's not falling off before the end of the 30 seconds. Do you want to have a go?
So middle.
Yeah. And before we've done any of these hangs, we've made sure that Hannah is nice and warmed up and she's got some chalk in her hands for grip. So same thing again, just easing down into that. See, she's got the nice good form again, shoulders engaged, core engaged, and she's nice and in line with the board. And she's just going to hang here for 30 seconds and then have a nice big rest. Now Hannah's done the density hangs, we're going to look at a slightly different protocol. It's going to be a little bit harder and working more towards the endurance side of things. So we're going to do something called repeaters, and it's just going to be 7-second hangs with 3 seconds off. And instead of being easy this time, we're looking for a bit of a medium feel towards this and a bit of a pump in the forearms. So this is great training if you're a route climber or if you just want to get some general fitness into you so you can build up everything else as well. So for this one, we're going to move on to these smaller edges here. These are 20mm edges, so not super small. You can do this on any other fingerboard that has this edge, but we're going to do it on here for now. And like I said before, we're just going to go for those slightly short hangs, and we're going to do 6 sets of these to get to a minute. And then you can rest for a minute up to 3 minutes each time, depending on what sort of difficulty you want to go for, and you can do anything up to 10 sets of this. So if we get back into the same position again, she'd be warmed up for this, and making sure you've got chalk. So going for these slightly smaller edges, we're going to make sure that we've got all 4 of our knuckles nice and bent to a right angle, nothing hanging down or sagging off. So slightly different to what we've done before, but Hannah's getting there straight away, so that's good. And then just sinking down into this, and we're going to count it down from 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Rest for 3, 2, 1, and then back into that hang. And like I said, we're doing this for 6 reps in total, so this is going to take us to a minute. And this should feel a little bit harder for Hannah this time, so she's pulling down on the board a little bit more. If you need to mix it up as well and it's not hard enough, she can start to take an extra foot off, so she can put weight just through the one leg, and she can lift it up onto her toes. And if you're even feeling strong enough and this doesn't feel that hard, you can go straight to hanging just with your arms for this. But make sure that you start with the easier version and build it up. Don't jump straight into the harder ones, otherwise it can get too hard too fast and then you can get an injury. Okay, so now we have tried out the easy session, the medium session, now we're going to go for the hard session. And this is going to be slightly longer hangs this time, but with much bigger rests. So we're going to be going for 10 seconds hanging on this fingerboard, but we're going to be resting for about 2 minutes every time. And this is maximal hangs. So before we've done this, we've taken the time with Hannah to work out what her max hang is, and that is the heaviest weight that she can hang holding onto the fingerboard for 10 seconds with her feet off of the ground. And for Hannah, we worked out that is with an added 10 kg to her body weight. So for this session, we're going to drop it down just a little bit to her actual body weight, and we're going to work for that so that it's not too hard, because you don't really ever want to work to your absolute max for these sessions. And for this one again, she's going to go onto these small edges, and because she's doing max, we're going to be really careful about the form again. So we're going to make sure that she's got those fingers sitting nice and even on the fingerboard. Her shoulders have to stay engaged the whole time, and the same with her core. And for this one, you're only going to do about 8 hangs total with those 2 minutes rest in between, and we're aiming to get to the 10-second mark every single time. Just getting on, making sure that her fingers are nice and comfortable again, and this time she's going to drop down and take both feet off and hang for those 10 seconds. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Perfect. So she managed to do the whole thing with her form good there. Now she's just going to rest for those 2 minutes and then repeat this another 8 times to make the set. If you're wondering how often in the week you should be hangboarding or fingerboarding, when you're starting off, keeping it easy, it can be a few times a week, 3 or 4, depending on how often you train. If you start to build up the difficulty of it, then it needs to be less frequent. Stuff like repeaters, which was the medium session, and max hangs should only really be done once a week, and only after you've done a good amount of the easy stuff first. You need to really build up that fitness and stability in all of your fingers and your joints to make sure that you're doing it nice and healthy, because if you go too hard too fast and do it too often, then you'll probably get an injury. The structure for your fingerboarding sessions in relation to your other training can vary depending on how difficult it is. For stuff like the easier sessions and repeaters, you should ideally be doing those at the end of your session with a 10-minute break between your climbing and doing those. For stuff like max hangs, it's actually better to do it at the start because it's probably going to be the hardest part of your session. They can be quite intense in your fingers, so you make sure that you do those, have a 10-minute rest, and then you make sure to avoid anything that's too crimpy in the rest of your session. If you're wondering when to start hangboarding, it's probably best that you do a little bit of climbing first. So if you've been climbing for maybe 6 months, it's probably better to keep climbing for the next 6 months. Make sure you've got about a year of regular training once or twice a week, and make sure that you've exhausted all other sources on the wall. If your technique isn't great and you haven't done much general climbing, then there's no need for you to start fingerboarding, and it's probably best to go back and revisit those areas first. If you're wondering how to warm up for hangboarding, the easiest method is just to go climbing and do your usual warm up. If you're limited for space, try and do a general pulse raiser on the floor by doing some star jumps or running on the spot. You might be wondering if you should use chalk, and the simple answer is yes. Even though it's wood, it's basically the same as any other climbing holds. You're going to have more grip and stick a little bit better if you're using chalk. If you've got sweaty hands, it's going to be a lot harder. Fingerboarding or hangboarding is a really useful training tool, but if it's used incorrectly, it can lead to injury. A few things that you should avoid when hangboarding is progressing too quickly, using holds that are too small, or trying too hard with too much extra weight. Make sure that you build it up nice and slowly and stick to the bigger edges to start with until you feel more comfortable and more confident. And try not to build it up week by week. It should be a monthly thing, at least 6 weeks at a time. So just don't rush into it and make sure you're doing it as safely as possible. I hope you've enjoyed this video. For more training and climbing content, subscribe to our channel. And if you want an in-person advice on fingerboarding or any other climbing coaching, then follow the link in the description.